is Labor Day here in the United States, and we're going to start you off with a story about Donald Trump. 91 felony indictments against Donald Trump, but the former U.S. president appears to be unstoppable. New Wall Street Journal opinion polls show that he is leading the Republican campaign for the 2024 presidential elections. Reports say that Trump has the support from 59% of Republican primary voters, an 11% increase since April. This is a trend for Trump, who has seen polling and fundraising boosts with each indictment this year. These indictments are in the hush money case in New York, in the classified documents case in Florida, and in the federal 2020 election subversion case in Washington as well. Wall Street Journal polls show that some 78% of voters say that Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election were legitimate attempts to ensure an accurate vote. Looking at the rising support for the former president, candidates who have avoided attacking Trump out of fear of alienating the Republican base are now reportedly ready to do so. They're stepping up their own campaign in early voting states like Iowa and New Hampshire in the hope of slowing his momentum. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is also bidding for the Republican Party's nomination to be the candidate in the 2024 White House race, has been struggling with his campaigns as polls show him lagging far behind frontrunner Donald Trump. Behind DeSantis are Indian American candidates Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy. Then there are those who are pushing for the notion that Donald Trump's candidacy could face a legal challenge under the U.S. 14th Amendment, a long shot, which disqualifies anyone who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States from seeking public office. However, the court would have to decide that. Regardless, for more on this, we are being joined by a political analyst, Dr. Christina Iona Dragomir from New York. Christina, great to see you. Happy Labor Day. This Wall Street Journal poll is very interesting. The editorial board writes that this is exactly the result that the Democrats want, to keep focus on Donald Trump so he wins the nomination and then convict him in trials before the general election in November. What do you make of that strategy on the part of the Democrats? Is it true?
Hello, Susan. Great being here. Thank you for having me over. I would like to bring to your viewers' attention that this is an important poll that came out from a very reputable institution, but we are still very far away from the elections, and we are also looking at a poll that was conducted with 1,500 voters, and among which there were 600 Republican primary voters. So we really need to take this into the context, and we really need to understand the complications that this brings. However, what you pointed out, Susan, it's a really important point. That is that the Democrats are playing a very slick strategy in which they are looking at Trump winning the nominations, and after that, possibly him being convicted, and as a result of a conviction, him not being able to run or falling really drastically on the poll. However, I think this is a very dangerous strategy that the Democrats might be playing. And one of the reasons is that once former President Trump will get the nominations for the candidacy to the presidency of the United States, he will garner a lot of public support. So once that public support is allied with Trump's candidacy, it's going to be very hard for anybody, including the Democrats, especially President Biden, to actually rebuke that. So I think it's a very difficult game, a very dangerous that they are playing, which is going to make them seem even more that this is politically motivated. So while this is a really good political strategy on its face, it might be a dangerous one on the long run.
Yeah, such a great point. It really is risky on the part of the Democrats. Then you have that argument of election interference from the Biden administration that's going to really blow up if that happens. So here's the problem, though, with the Republicans. And as you mentioned, we are so far away from Election Day, and we have to be careful to rely on these polls as we did during the midterms. But more than 1.5 times as many voters say that these indictments make them less likely to vote for Donald Trump than more likely. Now, this reflects the tilt of independent voters, as well as 16% of GOP voters who said that the indictment would also make them less likely to vote for Donald Trump in this Wall Street poll. So, again, these responses are before any of the coming 4 trials. While the former president enjoys a lead, do you think that he can keep the momentum in a general if he becomes the Republican nominee?
Historically speaking, these momentums tend to be very short-lived. Therefore, the candidates really need to time them very well. If they start very early, they can garner a lot of support, but the momentum can be lost on the way. And therefore, it's going to be very, very difficult for Trump to maintain this. However, we have seen that Trump is the political disruptor by excellence. We have seen that while he is keeping the momentum on one level, he is able, when this momentum is winding down, to actually come up with another strategy and pivot very swiftly. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a strategy that this is employed right now, but that Trump's strategists are actually looking at various ways in which they can pivot and they can change the attention of the electorate if needed be. However, who I think that really needs to pivot at this point is candidate DeSantis, who has a very difficult job right now because on one hand, he has to prove that he's a good governor. He's facing really hard times. Florida has been under so much pressure right now because of the hurricane. And also he has to be a really strong candidate for presidency and a possible opponent to Trump. So I think DeSantis has his plate full, and he really needs to look at this poll and really make sure that the strategies that he is employing are somehow shifting, because whatever he is doing, he is sinking farther and farther in the poll, allowing the other candidates to actually rise, even if for a little bit, like Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley, who are currently raising a little bit on the polls because DeSantis is falling so far behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fascinating to see why DeSantis is lagging behind, considering the fact that, he's a governor, he's governed, he's been successful in Florida. And also this recent disaster of a hurricane, really, he did deliver. That's the kind of person he is. We'll be watching very closely. Dr. Christina Iona Dragomir, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
My pleasure, Susan.